Hi, I'm Mike Thompson from Melbourne in Australia. And I'm here to talk to you about backyard astroscience. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, you're going to give me that clicker. Okay. So what we're going to talk about right now, a quick overview of the session. We're going to go through what is backyard astroscience, where do robotic telescopes play a role in what we're doing, some project examples, what does the future hold for us, and then some time for questions, hopefully. And there's prizes for questions. There we go. So at its core, Backyard Astroscience is a web-based astronomy education service. It's born from my experience with working with my local astronomical society, and I was doing a lot of work with the junior section. These are young kids, they start at 6, they go up to about 14. Once they reach about 14, then their schoolwork starts to get away and they kind of drift away from the society, which is cool, by the way. We hope that they come back again. What we aim to do is to provide a stepping stone for novice astronomers. So these are the guys, they've gone to the store, they've bought a telescope, they've set it up in the backyard, they've seen some stars, and then they move their telescope and they see some more stars. Well, what now? What am I going to do with this telescope? We find that a lot of telescopes live out their life in a cupboard, and that's a great shame, and we're trying to change that. The online service provides tools and techniques around using your telescope. That's available in a lot of places. But what we also do is we interleave that with project cookbooks, what we call cookbooks, which are detailed instructions on how to achieve a project, but without clearly defining or clearly setting the target. So for example, if you want to do constellation spotting, well, you pick your constellation. To turn it from just looking at the sky and looking at a constellation, we talk about plate solving, so that you can prove that you've actually picked the right constellation and start moving to the next ones. We go all the way up through deep sky astrophotography and even exoplanet transit tracking. And with those projects, of course, you can pick your own exoplanet from some of the known catalogues. We also focus on trying to lower barriers to entry. So we do that in two ways. One is providing access to people and projects that are running elsewhere, and also focusing on the use of free or low-cost tools. So there was some mention earlier on in the week about the use of GIMP instead of Photoshop, right? So our tool sets are based on using GIMP. We do use VFOT from the AAVSO, but we also have instruction sets on AstroImage-J, freeware, right? And we're acting as a communication hub. We're trying to bring students together. So if we've got a school, Australia's quite big, we could have a school in Broome on one side of the country and a school in Sydney collaborating on the same project, using the same cookbook. They decide the target and off they go. And it allows you to work at your own pace. You pick the subjects as you go, you build. If you want to do it again, you do it again. Off we go. So where do robotic telescopes play a role? And here we need to make a little bit of a distinction between robotic telescopes and go-to telescopes. Because go-to telescopes are becoming very, very common now. And that means the students are very familiar with using some of the control software that comes with those go-to telescopes. But really what we're talking about here is remotely operable robotic telescopes. So you can dive on the internet and start using these things. And that means we get low-cost access to high-quality, well-maintained equipment in dark sites. So even if we've got schools in suburban Melbourne, lots of light pollution, we can use telescopes in Coonabarabran, in New South Wales, Siding Spring, or even Spain or in the US. That allows us to observe potentially transitory objects on the other side of the world. So if we get a supernova that goes off in the northern hemisphere, well, we can still observe it. It also allows us to observe during the day. A lot of teachers see astronomy by its very nature as being an extracurricular activity because you have to do it at night. Well, not with remotely operable telescopes. You run your session using a scope on the other side of the world. I've run sessions from a train in Melbourne. A lot of our parents get a little bit concerned about putting expensive equipment in the hands of young kids. But again, with these robotic telescopes, the control systems are really what's controlling the equipment. You can't break it. If you do break it, it's the fault of the control system. It's not your fault. And what robotic telescopes we've been using? We've been focusing primarily on the use of the iTelescope network. And we did, at one point, we had to jump across and start using the Hubble Space Telescope, which scared the living bejesus out of parents because they thought we were actually using the scope. But really what we were doing was using the legacy archive and starting to supplement some of our imagery with the legacy archive. And it's been great this week to see LCO and Skynet talking about the archives that they're building up, because we'll be able to use those too. So, sort of project examples, supernova tracking. That was actually one of the first projects. We'll talk about that in a second. We set up a variable star hunt for the southern hemisphere. Project Exoplanet, the exoplanet tracking project we mentioned earlier. Project Einstein, again, we'll touch on that in a second. We have dipped our toe in spectroscopy. Yay, thanks Tom. And we want to get much deeper into that. And we'll do a little case study on one of our students. So this is one of our first projects that we did with iTelescope. When we were originally gifted the time, we really had to think about how we're going to use it. And one of us, fortunately, a nova had gone off. This is back in 2013. And what we were able to do, one of our students suggested that we track the supernova as it dies away. So we used iTelescope, kept taking images, and you can see the change in the star. Now, scientific value, not a lot. But the educational value for the students to see an event happening in real time was a real eye-opener. And just as a point of interest, the supernova was originally detected by this guy John Seach in New Zealand. And what we found was we were struggling to get telescope time. And what we realized was we were competing for time on the same scope as John Seach. So yeah, we try to avoid him as much as possible, give him as much time on the scope as possible. Then I worked with Melbourne University and we set up a Southern Variable Star Hunt. And the idea was, Melbourne University have a loan program where they take 10-inch telescopes out to schools and they loan them out for 3 years. And they were struggling for projects. So we put together this variable star hunt where they could use DSLR cameras, pick a region of the sky, and collect and collaborate with data. Now, it's very difficult to get the schools to take regular imagery, but one of our students, Will Stam, that's in there, he really took the bull by the horns. We got him lots of iTelescope time, he picked his field, off he went, and lo and behold, he found 3 candidate variables in his first field. Wow. And they told us there was nothing to find. All these satellites that are up there doing these surveys, you know, they found everything. No. And Will, back in January 1st, 2017, got his first catalogued variable star with a lot of help from the AOVSO to get his data quality right. But yeah, the engagement with those kinds of organisations has been invaluable for us. We put together a little program to celebrate the centenary of general relativity. We did a lot of exercises with students with bits of cloth and cricket balls and marbles and rolling around to show the difference between Newtonian space where everything's flat and Einsteinian space where everything's curved. Don't do that, by the way. Yeah, health and safety. We got away with it. We did a public demonstration of that, and it actually went extremely well. But what we also wanted to do was just see it in action. So we wanted to try and image some gravitational lensing events, Einstein ring arcs. And what we tried to do that with iTelescope, and what we found was even with the much larger telescopes that we've got available, the exposure time that we needed was very, very long. So we needed a bigger telescope. And that's when we went to the Hubble. So what we did was we taught the guys how to go and trawl. We told them about the telescope itself and the different instruments and the data that they capture. And then we trawled the legacy archive until we could find the sort of imagery that we wanted. And of course, that comes in as FITS files. And our guys needed to learn, or we needed to teach them how to process those FITS files, get those across into the GIMP, play around with them. And lo and behold, you can see all these ring arcs. Einstein in action. Smart cookie.
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Cool. Oh, better jump on there. Project Exoplanet was our exoplanet tracking project. Again, we used iTelescope. iTelescope has a really cool feature. With one checkbox, you can get your data transferred across to the AVSO. So you run your imaging session, get up in the morning, do your VFOR. It's cool. The sort of educational outcomes that we got with these kids. Now, bear in mind, these are kids 8, 9, 10, 11, roughly. That's the age range that we're talking about. But they're understanding celestial mechanics, use of catalogues to find objects because we needed to pick our exoplanet, obviously driving the remote telescope, planning the observing sessions, selecting the camera and the telescope combination to get the view that we wanted, and then reducing the data. And the real eye-opener for them was that an observation doesn't have to be a picture. It doesn't have to be an image of the object. It could be a graph. All right? And that changed the way that a lot of our students thought about how they were doing astronomy. So, enough from me. Why don't we hear from them? Can we just click on Amelia? No volume, it's on you.
I am 10 years old and I'm in grade 5.
Wonderful. And Amelia, can you tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure. My project was called Life on Exoplanets. I observed the transit of the exoplanet WASP 46b around its parent star.
Fantastic. And why did you do it?
Well, I'm concerned about climate change and the effect it is having on our planet. So I wanted to see if there was another planet that it could support human life.
And did you achieve what you expected?
I achieved a lot more than I expected. I was able to learn how to use specialist equipment to observe an exoplanet which is more than 300 light years away. I learned that WASP 46b has an orbit of 1.43 days, which means it is very close to its parent star, and therefore it would be too hot to live on.
Great. And what did you learn by doing this project, Amelia?
Well, the main thing I learned was the enormous number of planets that are yet to be discovered.
And did you enjoy doing the project?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very fun.
And would you do another project like this?
Definitely. It was very interesting.
Wonderful. Thanks, Amelia.
Bye.
And then we got Amelia to interview her dad.
Hey everybody, this is my dad, Mark.
Hello.
So Dad, what did you learn by doing this project?
Well, Amelia, I learned quite a lot about exoplanets and how accessible the specialist technology used in astronomy is to everyday people like you and I. I was involved in the project with Amelia from start to finish and enjoyed watching her confidence grow as she learned about exoplanets, which is not something that is typically covered in traditional education curriculum.
Awesome. Do you think it was worthwhile?
Absolutely. The learning for both of us was so enjoyable. But for me, seeing Amelia able to confidently present her research at such a young age hopefully inspires other young people, particularly girls, to follow.
That's great. What was the feedback from the school?
Well, Amelia's school was extremely supportive and acknowledging of the work she did and supports STEM projects through the Victorian Science Talent Search program, which is run every year.
Awesome. Thank you, Dad.
No worries. Bye, Meals.
Now they were a little bit modest there. That Victorian Talent Search program is a statewide competition. They won that, but they've advanced to a national competition. They won that too. So they're pretty pleased. The future for us, we want to expand our project set. We want to get deeper into a set of spectroscopy projects. We want to expand our engagement with schools and college groups. We also want to promote the brand, and one of the ways we're doing that is we've put together a TV series. We're at the beginnings of that. We've written the TV series and we're looking for production partners to help us put that together. And we really want to become a source of inspiration and guidance for amateur astronomical societies, schools and college groups. So rather than trying to barge into an astronomical society and tell them what to do, where they get stuck and they want a project, come to us, we can give you a cookbook, we can give you all the assistance that you need, and even if you're a remote society, hey, we've got Skype. So we can do virtual interventions, we can do physical interventions if we happen to be nearby. Questions. And questions get a
We have
prize.
time for just one question.
Oh, really? Better be a good one.
Can I please have a prize?
Does that count?
Was Amelia able to use iTelescope.com and operate it herself, or did her parents do it?
Great question. Amelia and Mark ran the whole project themselves in their study. They took them about 2 weeks to do it. It was a real test of our cookbook because what I wanted them to do was to do as much of the project themselves. We did 2 short Skype interventions, about half an hour each, and that was all that was needed to get them to the end of the project, and they nailed it, even to the extent that the light curve that they generated had a little gap in it, because during the session, during their observing session, the weather conditions in Siding Springs had changed, and a fog bank had come up, and the observatory had detected that and closed the roof. Right, and then the fog bank died away, and the roof opened up again. That meant there was a gap in the light curve, but we could explain it. And partly the reason I could explain it was iTelescope have webcams within the observatory. So I was capturing a time lapse of the telescope that Amelia was using, unbeknownst to Amelia, so that I could give that to her later as real testament to the fact that she had really controlled that telescope, she'd really done that piece of work. But it also allowed us to prove that it was the fog bank that had closed the roof, and that was why there was a gap in the data. It wasn't a big enough gap to completely invalidate the light curve. So in a way, the imperfect result gave us an even more perfect result, because even the problem we could explain. More questions?
Is there a video of or a link to the video of Vivian Amelia, that I could show the class?
Absolutely, I can give you a copy of it, or if you go to the website, there's a much more detailed version. We did almost like a dummy news broadcast video. And we did that because she was engaged in this talent search project, which is Australia-wide, and we were concerned that if there was an additional judging session that she couldn't travel to, that she may get lost in the mists. So we did this kind of news broadcast type video that we could distribute along with her project. So yeah, you dive on the website, you can grab it if you want. If you want that content, I can give you that content, whichever you like. Any other questions?
I admire Australian astronomy. Really, didn't you get few Guinness records for the most observers in a certain night?
Now, there was a recent competition to try and get as many observers as possible observing the same objects at the same time.
Yeah.
Which was we were trying to observe the moon, weren't we? And yes, we right across Australia we nailed that. Absolutely nailed it.
Wow.
Actually, one of our other students, Blake, who does get involved in spectroscopy, and I'm dying to talk to Tom about that later, he set up his own session with his school and managed to get more attendees from his session at his school with all the parents, kids, everybody they knew, than the universities could. Right? The word of mouth within the schools was so strong that he could get that group. Swinburne wants to say, well, it wasn't a competition, but you won it.